Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast, and we start as usual on the DXY on the weekly time frame. We had a bullish reversal week last week, but we are still on the low and we are still in an overall bearish trend. On the 4-hour time frame, we can see that this weekly candle is actually made up of very corrective price action, and we are approaching this liquidity area here to the left. We had a small gap which is filled already, and we are now waiting for price to show us some clear directional sentiment. Right now in a corrective move, it could go, this can just tickle up into this area before we see the first reaction. And that's actually what I'm looking for right now. I'm expecting price to reach this area before we see some form of reaction, preferably an impulsive move back into structure, and then followed by a lower time frame bearish continuation. And we know we are in for the next leg to the downside, at least to the previous lows, before we then might see a bigger bear flag continuation on the midterm or whatever. But we don't want to speculate too much. We just want to be prepared for all the eventualities the market might throw at us, so that we know what we are actually looking for and when to change our bias. This liquidity area is also basically the level where I might change my bias. So if I suddenly see an impulsive move, a bit more impulsive price action, and then followed by a bullish continuation on the lower time frame, then I know I will take the signal from the market and I change my bias from bearish into more a bullish sentiment. Going to the 4-hour time frame on Euro US dollar, we can see it's basically the inverse picture, and we have the same. We had here very corrective price action into this liquidity area here. It's an area of interest. It's the start of a smaller running channel here, and basically the start of the corrective phase after this last impulsive area. Here we also have this area of interest a bit further down, and we are looking for now for basically a breakout of this corrective price action. It's very, very similar to what we saw before on the DXY. We have this overall corrective price action, and I'm now looking for 1-hour structure here, a bit more a flat flag basically here into this area. That's just the volatility wick, so we can cut through that. So this would be then the section 2, and I'm waiting for price to form at least a proper second base, and then I would entertain a short in this area if I get an overall more flat structure in this area, which would then mean that the DXY would probably creep a bit further up. On the other hand, if we suddenly see a break above this area here, followed by a bull flag continuation, then we know we will continue long in Euro US dollar, and the DXY would then continue to sell off. So at the moment, looking at the DXY, I would actually, my bias is more towards the long, but looking at this price action right now, just basically this price action what we have here, if we see this flat flag here, that would also make sense to at least trade into the next bigger area of interest here to the left. Australian dollar, US dollar on the daily time frame, we can see it's also overall the whole area here is very corrective. We got some impulsive move to the downside, which is then retraced fairly fast. And on the lower time frame, we can see we have here then non-progressive price action on the 4 hours. So we had no clear direction, and we are trading just around the previous high here. And I'm looking for now for some form of reaction. Overall, I'm leaning, as I said, a little bit more towards a medium term continuing dollar weakness. So therefore, Australian dollar, US dollar, more to the upside. But we can see price is stalling here, and we still left a small gap here on the low to this area of interest, this liquidity area here. So it would make sense for price to come down here one more time and then form a bigger 3-touch structure to then continue to the upside. So there might be room for a lower time frame short in here in this area before we then enter a long on the low here to the on this area of interest after we close this gap. Pound US dollar looks a bit different. We discussed that before. Here on the daily, we have a clear liquidity area here. This is visible on the daily, even visible on the weekly. We had this expanding 1, 2, 3 into this high with a structure within structure, another 1, 2, 3 into this area of interest here to the left. It's actually almost as a weaker value area already. And then we had a very nice impulsive reaction from the high. On the 1 hour time frame now, we can see we had this nice reaction after we failed to continue to the upside. I think we discussed that already a week before, and then we had this corrective price action here, and now it seems like we are getting a little bit more momentum to the downside. So right now I'm just looking on the at least 1 hour time frame for some form, again a bit more a flat correction here in form of a 3-touch structure, something like that, to continue the short to the downside. But I want to see at least a 1 hour fairly good developed structure to enter a short to the downside. US dollar yen on the daily time frame, we had here that's also an interesting one. We discussed it as well multiple times. We had this V shape here, the sell-off. We left the gap to the previous low, and then we tried to sell multiple times. We had this structure here, which then came down. We failed to continue to the downside. Instead, it came fairly aggressive back to the upside. So we have an impulsive bullish move here from this low, and then going down to the 4 hour time frame. We had a very nice reaction last week. We left this liquidity area here. We started to turn around with an impulsive move here, and you can see here it's from no man's land. That's why we got this very strong, nice bullish reaction. There were some trades in here on the lower time frame in form of insurance entries, and we also had a 4 hour entry here because this is basically a V-shape, an inverse V-shape recovery. It's clear visible on the inverted scale. Just let me invert the whole chart shortly, and you can see I see the shorts better than the longs. I mean, everybody is a bit different in that regard, but we can see here we had this bigger V shape. We came from this area of interest. We then sold off, and we left this liquidity area here, came back into this area and had a very strong bullish reaction. Keep in mind it's an inverted chart, and now we are looking for price to finish the last leg into the previous high at least. Let me go back to the normal scale, and I'm now looking on the 1 hour time frame for price to finish the last leg into this previous high. And when we go back to the 4 hour time frame, let me just clean that up here. I want to keep this. We can see we have here this high to the left as well. And when we look at the overall proportions and we look at this leg here and we say this is the correction here, the volume accumulation, and we just mimic this leg here, basically here it lines up fairly well with the previous high here to the left. So if we can get a lower time frame long entry here, retesting this smaller structure here, preferably during Asia session, ready into London session, and we can enter with a good positioning in this area here, then there is a very good chance for price to tap the next higher value area, and we are already in a good trade. Otherwise, if price is just continuing from here, which would also make sense, we are waiting to see what reaction we see on the next area of interest. Euro Australian dollar on the daily time frame, we had this very strong reaction on this area of interest to the left. That's already a value area here, and we see we are in a bearish momentum run, and I'm now looking for price to continue to the downside. I'm going here to the 1 hour time frame. We had this corrective price action here, and we broke through this fairly aggressive, and we are now trading below this whole corrective price action, and we are now looking for a bearish continuation. The price action here does not look too nice. It's a bit wicky here, but we also had news, and we are now waiting for price to form at least a proper second base, which then would create a fairly structured 1 hour bear flag continuation, and preferably retesting this previous low here. So if we get something like that, that would be a prime entry for a short continuation. Euro Canadian dollar on the daily time frame, we can see here we are still trading between these two levels. We identified that before. We have these two highs. We tapped into this for like 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, and we're still trading between these areas. So it's basically non-progressive, and we are now looking for price to continue to the upside, because we had such a long time and we did not see any bearish reaction. Even though we had an initial bearish reaction and then creeped a bit higher, and this is that's non-progressive price action, which has leans more towards here creating middle section for the next long continuation. And I want to see at least a 4-hour structure here. We can see we have two areas actually. We have the start here of a running channel, this small running channel. We have here this area of interest, which was the initial or the start of this initial impulsive move. And then we have here section 1, section 2, and we are now waiting for price to come back down one more time, closing the gap, finishing the overall 1, 2, 3 bull flag continuation, and I would then entertain a long entry in this area. The structure is getting a bit large already, so therefore and it has to be at least a 4-hour reversal candlestick pattern to enter in this area. Otherwise, if we get a reaction here followed by a lower time frame bull flag continuation, that would also be okay then to enter in this area, and there is enough room to the upside. Euro yen on the daily time frame, we are still in a bullish momentum run. We tapped into this smaller area of interest, the first area of interest. We identified that last week already. I had it on watch and I took a short trade here. On the 1-hour time frame, we can see we had some fairly nice reaction. So we had this price tapping into this small area of interest, and then we had this 1, 2, 3 with a very nice bearish reversal candlestick here. On my funded account, I got tapped out here with the spread, and on my personal account, on actually basically under, I stayed in the trade and I could book some profit. But you can see overall the trade did not work out in the long run, because we are still in this bullish momentum run and we still have two more weighted value areas a bit higher up. So it makes sense for price to move higher, and that's what we are looking for right now. On the 1-hour time frame, I'm looking for price to form a bigger structure in this area here. So coming back one more time into this low for a 1, 2, 3, and then the next bigger move to the upside. If we get such a big structure, we might go to the really the bigger value area here. So if we accumulate, you can see here we are in a very strong momentum run. We need a bit more volume accumulation in here to then reach the next higher level. So it would make sense for price to stay in this area a bit longer and come back one more time, or even form this 4-hour continuation before we then see the next bigger move to the upside. So there might even be a short-term short trade within this leg here. Australian dollar Canadian, here we start on the 4-hour time frame. We have this clear area of interest to the left, the start of this very strong impulsive move. We came back up, we left the gap, and now we are like scooping around, and we are looking for price to close the gap into this area here. And we can see we are stalling, we have a stalling in price, and I'm looking for price to form a clear structure here. On the 1-hour time frame, we have this small area of interest. This is just a volatility gap here again. So I'd like to see price form the second area here, second base, come back up one more time, and then form a bigger 1, 2, 3, preferably even with the gap. That would be perfect for a 1, 2, 3 continuation pattern to the upside. And Australian dollar, Swiss francs, we discussed it last week. We were looking for price to close the last leg to the downside, and we were looking for a more flat continuation already. We get that. We had this expanding structure with structure within structure, a 1, 2, 3 into this expanding structure. We have this a bit more visible liquidity point a bit higher out of the structure, and we see price tapped into this area and then failed to connect to the downside. So we are neutral on this right now. We can see price is stalling outside this structure, but still below this liquidity area here to the left. So we are by definition neutral at this point. Going down to the 1 hour time frame, we can also see this price action is a bit messy. So we basically only have one top here. There's no clear structure yet. This could potentially be a middle section. So if we get something like that, if price is forming a second high and coming back one more time so that we get a 1, 2, 3, then I would definitely entertain a long from this area. It would make sense since we are neutral. On the other hand, if we just see a break below this whole a bit more messy price action followed by a lower time frame bearish continuation, I would entertain a short in this area. And there's still more than enough room even to just manage the trade to the next inflection point within this last piece of price action here. Pound Canadian on the daily time frame, we see here we have this value area here to the left. We tapped into this value area in form of an expanding structure with the 1, 2, 3. We had this very nice 2 high test candles. Then we had a bearish reaction, a very strong bearish reaction, then followed by this continuation. And this continuation is very messy price action. We can see that on the 1 hour time frame fairly clearly. So this is not really something which gave us a clear entry, but nevertheless it was a corrective phase here, and it seems now that we broke below and we are now trading a bit in no man's land. We have this small inflection point here to the left. We did not really tap into it, and we are now looking for price to form another continuation on the lower time frame. So that's what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for a 1 hour structure here. I keep in mind we have this area of interest here to the left. It's very small. It's a weak inflection point, and I'd like to see price forming a bit more structured continuation in this area here. This is again is a news volatility week. So if we see if price is even tapping, let me clean that up here. Oh, sorry. Do I get the right now? Oh, let's just do it this way. If price is even closing the gap here, we can see on the 15 minutes that we had this gap here from the news event, and this is basically a V shape. Then we came back down. We left this area here, which we identified before for a potential bear flag to the downside. And if we get a bigger reaction, if we get something like that into these areas here, or just a little bit more structured, bigger flag, then I'm happy to entertain a short in this area. That would be even better. Give price a bit more time to form a more structured flag after this messy price action here. So yeah, that's it. A lot of the pairs are in areas where it could go either way. So we are a bit neutral, and we have to wait for clear price action confirmation. And we definitely have a close eye on the DXY. What will be the reaction when we reach this small liquidity area here to the left? So that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.